what I really wanted was, to me, a lot of people say financial freedom, but really what we want is time freedom, right? We want to be able to, and not so we can just be lazy and sleep in as long as we want, which might be nice for a week or two, but to really be able to make the impact we want. So to me, I wanted to be able to write a book or write books. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to be able to spend more time with my family. I wanted to be able to spend more time with my family, have the autonomy over my time.
Welcome to the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast. In the Champions Corner edition, I'm Mike Deaton, and together with Lydia, my co-host in life, business, and this podcast, we're taking you into the training room, deep in the dojo, sharing the secrets of what it takes to forge a champion. We're digging deep into mindset mastery, high-performance habits, best-in-class behaviors, and bringing you the tips and techniques that maximize human potential, brought to you from some of the best in the business.
So grab your buds and your seat. Hit subscribe and get ready to up your game. Let's do the show.
Let's do it. Welcome to another In the Champions Corner episode. Today we have a repeat guest, fresh off his knockout win from an earlier matchup, Bronson Hill. Bronson's forged an impressive path from his days scrubbing in on surgeries as a medical device sales rep to crafting a life of his design and of his dreams in real estate and investing. Driven by a desire to help medical professionals who typically earn a great living, but at the expense of trading their time for money, Bronson's pursued how to help investors find great passive income investments, grow their wealth, and ultimately enable greater degrees of freedom. Bronson's personified the champion's mindset and grown his business to one that has raised over $35 million in capital, helping partner in over 2,000 multifamily units worth over $200 million, as well as other alternative investments. He's also the host of the Mailbox Money Show podcast, author of a recent publication, Fire Yourself, mastermind and investing club host, public speaker, and world traveler.
This episode is packed with insights on how to transition into the world of entrepreneurship, what it takes to build a business, and how to stay mentally sharp and build a life of your own making.
Let's jump into the arena with Bronson Hill. Bronson, welcome back on the show. We're excited to have you and chat a bit more about your journey.
I'm excited to chat, man. I got my boxing glove back on. I'm ready to go. And this time, I guess instead of punching Patrick or other people, I can punch in myself. So
we can fight it. We can fight each other. You inspired us. Like I said, you inspired us to get the official gloves.
I love it.
Even though we're supposed to be the
referees,
yes. Or whatever. But good stuff.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So fresh back off a little bit of world traveling. We appreciate you jumping on. It's got to be days after you returned, but I know that's I think from previous conversations we've had in person, I think travel is a big part of your part of what drives you and what you like to do in life. But maybe just as an intro, give us a little bit of background. Like what was your childhood like, and just where you were born and things that led you up to at least your medical sales career.
Yeah. So I think it all started with a young boy and a dream. And I'm kidding. I'm not going to give you all the way back. No, I grew up in Seattle area.
Recorded here.
How much time do we have? Grew up in Seattle and lived there, up until I was about 22. We moved around a little bit, but mostly Seattle. And then I moved to LA when I was 22 or 23. And I actually moved to LA. I was a youth pastor actually in my former life. And so I worked with high school students, and I moved to LA to take an internship. I had lived in Uganda, Africa for about 5 months in college, doing some international service there with my church. And I ended up moving to LA, and then just kind of ended up staying and working on my BA and my master's. And I've been in LA since. There's been some moments over the last, 5-10 years. I'm like, why do I live in LA? It's such a crazy place to live, but I'm grateful. And yeah, it's definitely, but I'm of the belief too, that, being a youth pastor and then being in medical device sales for 10 years. I did that for 10 years. All of those things kind of add to being able to raise money and do real estate and be able to do different types of deals. And so a lot of times I think as an investor or as an individual, somebody will say, well, I've only been a doctor, or I've only done accounting, or I've only done, had a business or whatever. And all those things apply to real estate. And there's a lot of applicable things, as I know, you've had other things you've done as well. You guys have done other things, but so it's just kind of cool. I'm really grateful to have found finance and real estate and private equity to be doing this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's so true. I often reflect on the same thing that um, almost to a person, anybody you speak with will tell you, "Oh, I wish I would have started so much earlier and gotten all this stuff." But which is in a sense true, but in a sense as well, all of my experience led me to this point. And, I'm a better business person because I ran operations in a corporate environment, and I learned how to discipline and set goals and do various things. And yeah, so I do think, at least, I don't know if I call it wisdom, but the wise ones of us at least take those lessons from our past, good and bad, and carry those forward into our present life. What'd you go to school for? What did you have a certain thing in mind when you were going into school to
So
university?
I had a couple things. I really kind of bounced back and forth between doing ministry as a career, so working at a church and kind of helping people in that way, and business. And so I had, one hand, like I loved the idea of how businesses operate and making money and all that, but I also loved building people and just trying to find a way to figure out how to help people and do things that really have a long-term consequence. My life was really impacted in high school, just, a time in my life where I really, found faith and found God, and just, it really changed my life. And so I wanted to be involved with that as well. And so I feel like now I try to do kind of a mix of those things where I'm helping people, and I try to, I'm not somebody who's forcing anything down anybody's throat, but I try to, I feel like everybody has a purpose, everybody's got a reason to be here. And if we can uncover that for people, we can help them on their path. We've really done them a great service. And I think that's whatever faith or background or approach anybody takes, is just if we can be somebody who adds value to people. So my BA was in business. I did go to Bible school for a year, and then I got a master's in cross-cultural studies, which is kind of like a international service or leadership type of stuff. Yeah.
Nice. And business ultimately won out, I guess. Just life happened, or how?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. So a little long story short, I was actually talking about being in the arena. I was actually at this my last kind of job working at a church. I was at this mega church in the state of Montana, and it was the largest church in the state. It's 4,000 people. I had a high school group with 200 kids. And I tell the story sometimes, but I've never been fired from any job. But I'd been there a year and a half. I bought a house. And I was there, and they came to me like on a Friday, right after Christmas break. It was like the first week of January or something. And they're like, yeah, we just don't think it's a good fit. Yeah, and your last day is Friday. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I moved here and I bought a house, whatever. And so there's this saying, you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans, right? So there was, and so I think from that, just all these experiences that we have, they have the ability to they don't happen to us, they happen for us, right? So that was a very refining moment where over I think the next year or so, I kind of reframed how I looked at my life. I think sometimes when we're younger, we feel like, oh, this is like the best thing to do. If let's say your family's in law, it's like, oh, I got to be a lawyer, or if somebody's a pastor, I've got to be a pastor, or I've got to be this type of business person, or I've got to be like this other person. But what I realized, I think for me, I thought the highest calling was really to be a pastor, to really help people in that way. But what I realized is, like, if you're a person of faith, it's just, we're all called to make a difference, and we can make a difference wherever we are, whether it's as a salesperson, owning a business, being a pastor, a teacher, whatever, doctor. So I just think bringing that into whatever you do. So I look at, business, you can say one, but I still feel like I have, like, everything I do is really a service and a ministry to others, right? So, and if you keep that in first place, it kind of sets you apart a little bit. It just reminds you, like, this really isn't about me. It's not about building my kingdom, my brand. It's about helping people get where they want to go.
Yeah, great points. It's something I did want to touch on. I don't know if it's worth exploring any more deeply, but your why in terms of so you were in medical device sales, right? You were scrubbing in on surgeries, working with doctors, and doing things, and probably earning a great salary. And at some point, something sparked in you to make a change, right? To get out. So I'm curious about your why, and then we could talk about maybe the machinations of the change. I'd like to, did you burn the boats? Did you do a side hustle for a little bit, or kind of how that all played out. But yeah, initially, I mean, it sounds like you have a high desire and a purpose around serving, and that can be done in so many ways. To your point, that's so valid that we don't have to be locked into one avenue or anything like that. But yeah, anything other than that kind of drive you as a greater purpose or a whys in terms of.
Yeah, I think there's a number of whys. I think especially for you were sharing. We were talking before we started the show. Being in New Zealand for 2.5 weeks. So that was my 6th international trip of the year. Right, I love traveling. It's a great why for me. Just I feel like it's educational. You learn. You get out to explore. You're able to refresh. It's a reset. I think Americans just work way too much anyway compared to other countries. Like they take way more time off, and so. That's important for me. I'm a dad. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I want to be a great dad. So I want to be there for her. And then, my biggest why really is something that's been in my heart for a number of years. Is just really today there's 20 to 40 million human slaves in the world, which is hard to believe.
Mm-hmm.
That 2 or 3 times the size of greater LA area are actually in some sort of human slavery. So it could be sexual human slavery. It can be labor slavery. There's different types of people are trafficked from one place to another. And then it's just a really crazy, huge problem. The more you learn about it, the more complex it is. But to me, that's really a cause that, and I don't know what that would look like. Maybe there'll be some point where I go from doing my business to either starting a nonprofit or being more involved in that, or just kind of up to now just giving money to those causes. But I really, I just think, for people and you hear some of the stories are just absolutely heartbreaking. And, these people do anything to be free, and only about 1% typically actually become free. A lot of people die as a slave, or there's this thing where the victim becomes the victimizer. And so they can say, well, I can have an okay life if I recruit others or do other, so it's just a really insidious thing that will continue to get worse. So that's a big why for me.
Yeah. That's tragic. And I know several people in the real estate world that are focused on that in some way or another. So yeah, it is a terrible, it's a terrible thing that I think a lot of us, we just really aren't, it works underneath the radar. It's hard to believe in the United States of America that things like that even happen. But yeah, it's even here, kind of a deep seated issue.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, touching back on you went from medical device sales and got into an interest in real estate and passive income and investing. What was that about? Like how did that spark, and how did you go about transitioning?
Yeah. So, I had done medical sales. It was a great job. I enjoyed it. I was working, for a while, I was working a lot of hours. I was getting paid pretty well. At the end, I was making over $200K a year. And actually, I had got it down where I was doing maybe 30 hours a week or so. And so it wasn't super hard work, but I just didn't have control over my time. And so I kept trying to, over the years, I had been wanting to try to find a way to have a business or do something on the side that I could potentially leave doing the medical sales, because there was a lot of pressure. There's pressure to sell. There's pressure. You get these calls from your manager. Hey, you're going to sell any more medical widgets this month? And how's it going? And you just, what are you doing? And looking at your activities and questioning things. And so I did it for 10 years. But for a little while, I actually would take Friday afternoons and I would go to like Starbucks and I would just brainstorm what are business ideas that I could potentially do that could get me out of my job. And one was like starting like a mail order night guard kind of business. I was like, oh, I have a need of this. I could do this. So I kind of, I kind of pursue things and just get ideas going and try things. And then I ended up doing, we became an investment advisor for a few years. I called, back then it was called a registered investment advisor, RIA, but I still call myself an RIA, but it's a recovering investment advisor, right? I'm no longer, so in my book, I talk about, just how Wall Street really, it's a tough gig for a lot of people. It doesn't really serve a lot of folks. So for me, the drive in what I really wanted was, to me, a lot of people say financial freedom, but really what we want is time freedom, right? We want to be able to, and not so we can just be lazy and sleep in as long as we want, which might be nice for a week or two, but to really be able to make the impact we want. So to me, I wanted to be able to write a book or write books. I wanted to be able to travel. I wanted to be able to spend more time with my family and really have the autonomy over my time. And as it is now, I can take a day off if I want. I can go on a trip. I can, I have a team now, so we can kind of shut things down and say, okay, you guys just handle it for a while, right? And I can kind of just not have to work on it. So it's nice to be passively invested in things as well as having investments that pay. just consistently or cash flow over time that you don't really have to do any more work for, which is amazing, right? So it's a different type of way to live, different type of way to work. People think you're crazy. What are you doing? But it's especially for my family because nobody's entrepreneurial. They're all teachers and other things. So they're like, oh, you're crazy. But it's been a real, it's been about 2.5 years. I haven't had any regrets about leaving.
That's awesome. Yeah. Ultimately, money is the means to some end, and time is the ultimate resource that we all share, and nobody gets more or less theoretically than another. I mean,
right. You got to punch back to get more time. I need more time. So you got to work the glove back in the shot sometime here.
So. Thank you.
I do have a question, going back a little bit to what you said in the beginning, that we're all here with a purpose. And I wanted to ask you, how did you navigate through the journey of finding your purpose? Back when you were younger, I guess, maybe you thought, my calling is probably to be a pastor. And then how did you navigate through that? And did you say yes to every opportunity, or what was your mindset through that?
Yeah, it reminds me of the movie Yes Man. Have you seen the movie Yes Man with Jim Carrey? He says yes to every opportunity, and then later the guru is like, "Of course you don't say yes to everything. You can't." But anyway, gets you open. But no, that was a real pivotal moment for me. And this was 2000. It was actually in 2008. I was fired from this job as a pastor. A youth pastor. I'd never been fired from anything, and stayed in Montana for 6 months, and just kind of. I had a rental house there, was kind of fixing it up, and moved back to LA and just kind of went through this big kind of dark night of the soul. Okay, well, this has been my dream. What do I want to do? What does God want me to do? What's my purpose? What am I here for? And I think there's a couple tools that are really valuable for this. There's one called StrengthsFinder. StrengthsFinder is a personality assessment that really goes over, it's not like, oh, you're an extrovert, introvert. It kind of gets into what are your key, who are you and what are the roles or the functions that you can do? So for me, a couple of my top ones are competition and achiever, right? So those are a couple of big ones. So as I started looking at that, and then there's this test called the Love It test. You go throughout the whole week and you just make a note anytime you do something and you feel strong or you feel like you come alive. So you might not be great at it, but it was so at the end of my week, it was I have this StrengthsFinder test, and then I've got, I like helping people. I like finding solutions to problems. I like presenting information. I like having a variety of things. I like, being able to go, overcoming challenges. So I kind of started looking at a lot of these things, and I started saying, this feels like a salesperson. It could be a fundraiser, but maybe I'm not in the right seat on the bus. And I think being in the right place is really valuable. So it's interesting. You fast forward, I go from, so I realized, okay, maybe, and then just through a series of events, got into medical sales. But I went from being fired from a job, and then about 2 years later, I had this job as a medical sales rep, and I became the number one person in the company of over 100 people, salespeople. And it was I was winning awards, and I was making, from three times the amount, 3 or 4 times the amount. So it's amazing how just being in the right role and continuing to do that stuff, I still do. I still okay, what's the right role? Because we do change over time. But I think some of it has to do with, they talk about the intersection between what your gifts are and what the world needs, right? If you're really great at, playing board games and some of it, the world doesn't really need that. Okay, well, is that really going to serve the world as well? Is that something that provides value? And so I think as a constant, looking at different assessments, just talking to people, about it, praying about it, reflecting on it. And then you kind of get more and more honed in over time, hopefully, to realize this is what really gives me life. Actually, I want to share one more thing. So Dan Sullivan, I'm in a group called Strategic Coach, and he has they wrote a book called 10X is Easier Than 2X. Mm-hmm. And they talk about there's 4 quadrants. One is what you're incompetent at, right? So things you should not be doing, somebody else should be doing, right? So if between the two of you guys, one's competent, one's, it's okay, I'm not good at paying bills or whatever. Okay, so Gia's got to be doing, she's got to be paying, or whatever it is, whoever. So find out what you're incompetent in, what you're competent in, which means you can do it, but it's kind of a struggle. There's excellence, which means you have legendary skills. So in sales, I feel like I have excellent, I have a legendary skill set there. But there's another quadrant called unique ability. And unique ability is it's excellence. It's a lot of things that excellence has, but it includes never-ending learning, a sense of passion, that there's an energizing effect that happens. And and you're the only one that can tell if it is unique ability. And what I've realized recently is I've spent a lot of time not in my unique ability, which really my unique ability, I think, is strategic networking, thinking strategically about the business, and creating content or creating stuff for people, right? Those are things, if I can just do that all the time, that will give me life. That'll be awesome. So I think, anyway, that's a very long-winded answer, but I think doing those different assessments are ways to help figure out what you're here to do.
No, it's terrific. Definitely pulls on a lot of tenets that I've talked about in the past, but our culture, at least, doesn't seem to encourage this level of introspection, right? We go. We're in high school. We're either get a job, get a college, gap year. What are you talking about? Okay, but that's starting to come a little bit more in. But I know I talk to a lot of parents with kids, and they're like, "Oh, you can't take a gap year. You're going to get behind all your peers, whatever." But yeah, this level of introspection to really sit down and know thyself, as the Stoics say. And do just that. Interestingly enough, I just started listening. I don't know, are you aware of or a fan of Huberman in the Huberman Lab podcast?
Yeah, I listen to some of his stuff. He's great. Yeah, I do cold plunge. I did cold plunge this morning. So
okay, great. Yeah. He just released a podcast. I think the guy's name's Robert Greene, but he's written a book called Mastery, and apparently it's been for some time now. But they started explore. It's like a 3-hour episode, over 3 hours, on purpose and finding your purpose, and gets into a lot of the things you mentioned there, just as far as what are those things that light you up, and his view is ideally, if you can go back to childhood, you're born with this awareness or innocence, or maybe things layer on us as we go through life, our parents, our society, friends, expectations, all that stuff, so that all that stuff gets a little buried inside of us. But he mentions, and he goes through and references a lot of the greats, people that you think of, Steve Jobs, other people, Bill Gates, that had this early onset. Somehow they were introduced early on to the thing that they were passionate about, and then they were fortunate enough to be able to follow that. But those things that light you up and to your point, give you energy. And we're strategic coach people as well. So unique ability is great. We love it. We've read the 10X greater than 2X. Love the concept. It's amazing. Just all those things. But finding your purpose. It gets a bad rap, I think, or this whole concept of even finding your purpose. I mean, it's a little bit more about discovering and revealing what it is that will do that, and then picking, a lane, or at least experimenting, like it sounds like you did, which is awesome. Like you thought, as they say, think and grow rich. You sat down and thought about, okay, what could I do? And you explored. You tried this. Okay, maybe I don't like that. You tried that. Until you found what now is a lane that fulfills you for the moment and stuff. So all great stuff. I love that.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think there's kind of two things. One is just taking action towards your dreams, like doing the things that you feel like, okay, I'm here taking action. If there's two people and one has great ideas but doesn't take any action, the other person just takes action and like maybe doesn't have great ideas, but they just, okay, here's my goal, I'm going to try. And then another part of that is reflection. But you talk about the reflection of the reflecting. Michael Gerber, in his book, The E-Myth Revisited, talks about like, it's not just you're working in your business, but you're working on your business. So I do, once a quarter, I take 2 nights away and I just try to think about the business, and I whiteboard and I reflect, and I just really try to figure out, okay, what am I doing? Wait, is this really what I want to be doing? What's working? What's not working? What are the things that I should double down on? Because a lot of times, I think, Henry Ford even says, thinking is hard work, which is why so few people do it, right? We just get so autopilot where we don't think, we don't stop, and just, so let's really evaluate. But I think that's the part I really enjoy, is really trying to strategically think about, okay, what's happening here? What can I do? What can I not do? And it's a lot of growth can happen when we do that.
Yeah, 100%. That's one of my domains as well. I love. We just got back actually last week. We took 2 days off and we went to hot springs nearby and just kind of unplugged from everything and talked about the business and what we want to do, how we want to steer it, what other ventures we think of, and all those kind of things. So that's definitely one of my strengths as well. As I really enjoy, even in corporate world, I was always anytime we had strategy sessions or we're looking at strategizing, that was where I thrived as well. So that's good stuff. So you kind of ultimately have found your way into real estate and more than just real estate, but more, I don't know what you would call it, but it's really investing and private equity and finding those business models that yield passive income and good returns and stuff. How did you go about getting started in that? Did you join a group, find a mentor, model other people? Do just how did you enable that transition to happen, if you did?
Yeah, so there's really two things, and I think I talk about this in my book as well, where to get ahead financially, or just in life, there's really two things that can get you there. The first is networking, so meeting new people,
Mhm.
and the second one is education. There's another quote that says, you're the average of the five people you. Oh no, sorry, that's a different quote. But in 5 years, I got a lot of quotes floating around my head. When in 5 years you'll be the same person you are today, except for the books you read and the people you meet, right? So that, what is that? That's networking and education. Books you read, there's education. People you meet is networking. So to me, I started reading a bunch of books. There's the education. I went to meetups, and then these books kept talking to me. In real estate books, they started talking about, start a meetup, start a meetup, start a meetup. So I was like, okay, I'm going to start a meetup. So I started a meetup, and I met my first investor at that meetup, and I introduced him to somebody else who had a deal. And so then I raised 100K for my first deal, right, by doing that. So that was a huge thing, and then growing the network. And then I just kept going to events, going to, investing in myself. I went to an expensive investor cruise and connected with someone that I basically pitched them on the idea of like, how's it going raising money? And could I come on board and help you with this, right? And help you to grow and scale. And so we did it. We worked together for a couple of years, and I went from raising 100K to raising $15 million together over the next 18 months, right? So it's just like, it's not always linear. It's not like you just start and all of a sudden it's just that you just keep going, you keep going. All of a sudden, you don't know who you'll meet or what the need is and how you could potentially help this person. And so I think that's why I'm a big fan of masterminds. I know you guys are in probably a couple of masterminds as well. And it's just, the people you get in the room with can show you things and ideas and network, the things that you didn't even know existed, right? So I think that if we're, and there's that other quote, if you're the smartest person in the room, that it's time to find a new room, right? So to get in rooms where people are 1, 2, 3, 5, 10, 100 times further along than you are, you're going to learn a lot. And so that was super helpful for me.
Yeah, I love the curiosity, and I don't know if I'll call it humbleness or that, but just a couple things stand out. Like you mentioned earlier, traveling and just this love of getting outside of your comfort zone or your worldview and seeing other worlds. I love that too. As a matter of fact, I mean, I've traveled. I've been fortunate to travel to many, many countries, and it is eye opening. I think everybody should almost have to do it at some point, right? There should be a mandatory trip of some sort that people get outside of their own culture. It can happen even in the U.S. as well. I mean, there's different micro geographies and different things that we can see cultures, but that aspect, as well as just the learning aspect of masterminds, networking, meetups, being open to other people's viewpoints, experiences, knowing that you don't know everything and being willing and able to learn. And yeah, I think you grow so much. Well, I'll just say that you grow so much, as well as more quickly from having those experiences beyond your worldview.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Let's talk a little bit about, growing and scaling and starting something new. What is or are a hardship or hardships or obstacles you've had to push through, and how did you go about doing that as you were growing your business?
Yeah. So I think there's a lot of them. And I think, we can continually come up against obstacles of like, who am I? The biggest one I think is the imposter syndrome, right? Like, who am I to be somebody who writes books or does podcasts or YouTube? And almost every successful person that I've met has that, except unless somebody's a total narcissist or something where they just think they're great and nobody else does, or they just have no lack of self confidence ever. So I think that's an issue. That's an issue we come up against where it's like, if you haven't been a certain way, a lot of times life can inform that, hey, I've been this way in the past, this is who I'm going to be in the future. The only way to change that is you've got to, in your mind, really create this new future, this new person like what's the type of person. Napoleon Hill talks about that too, right? Whatever the mind can believe and achieve, or believe and conceive and believe, it can achieve. But to do that, you've got to spend time visualizing. You got to use what he calls auto-suggestion, which is like affirmations or something that you're saying, this is the person that I am. And as you basically create that with your words, you create that with your imagination and your imagery, you can become whoever you want to become. And so this is a really personal example. I got divorced about 7 years ago. And when I got through that, I just, I never wanted to be divorced, but I got through this, and it was like, I just had no sense of self-confidence. Like, who am I? What's my life? What am I about here? I'm a single dad now. And so what I did is I started creating affirmations around confidence and just focus and different things that I really, this is the type of person I am. And I didn't feel it right away. And a lot of times in life, we know things to be true, but we don't feel them in our heart. And the only way to get it is you have to meditate on it, right? So I do that as a spiritual practice as well. I take scripture or things that I know to be true, or God loves me, or these kind of things, and I meditate on those things. And over time, it gets into my heart. So it's the same when it comes to who we are, right? We meditate on those things that are true, or things that we want to be true. Like, I want to be this type of person. And the more that you say, this is the type of person that I am, eventually you start to feel that and you walk into that. And it's amazing. The universe and the world is an amazing place. If you just show up as a certain person and you've received all that inside of who you are, you show up and the world responds to you as that person. So I've watched myself change the last 5, 6, 7 years just from that, creating it in my mind, creating it in words, and then basically being able to walk in that, and then just watching doors open up. It's kind of magical. It's been really cool.
That's amazing. I love all that. We're big fans of much of what you said as well. And if you don't take conscious control of it, it will happen. Right? You will change. You will transform. You will become different identities. But it's going to happen because just what you were mentioning earlier, family pressures, even parenting, right? We're all guilty of, Johnny's the shy one, or we imprint these labels on people, and we internalize a lot of those, and so it can take a lot of work to unwind all that and then re-imprint whatever it is you want to become, if you do it consciously. If not, like I said, it's going to happen. It's just, society will impose it on you, as you'll get a 1% raise versus somebody else who gets a 10% raise, and you'll internalize the story that I'm not as good, or I'm not a hard worker, or I'm a victim, or whatever your story becomes. So
yeah, life, they say something like life is like 90% negative or something. Just like we're so biased to be negative. And so we just look at everything from a survivalist mentality. But, a lot of that was for when we were being chased by lions, and we had all, there was a more fight or flight need. Right. But now it's like somebody says something, all of a sudden we feel like we're being attacked by a lion. But, it's just amazing how we can create the future we want to create. And we do it through a lot of intentional practices.
Do you have other routines or practices? So you mentioned the cold plunge, which I have not ventured into the cold plunge. Although sometimes, we've got a good 6 inches of snow sitting out on the ground. After a run, I'll sit outside and cool down a little bit. That's about as far as I go these days. But affirmations, meditations, prayer. Do you have other routines that you use to try to stay mentally sharp and on top of your game?
Yeah, one big one I do. I look at health as a whole, as being a big deal. I can't remember who the author was. I think it was Mark Twain. He said the first wealth is health, right? And when working in the medical field, I'd see people that were in their 50s or early 60s, and they could have lived another 20, 25 years and have a better quality of life if they didn't smoke, they weren't overweight, if they didn't just have bad habits when it comes to health. And it's hard for me. I found like I gained about 30 pounds when I turned about 30. And so I ended up losing it about 6, 7 years ago, and I've kept it off. And part of the ways I've done that is through these Spartan races. So I do these obstacle course races, typically 3 to 13 miles. I do them competitively now. And so it gives me continual goals to push forward. Yeah. But I just, and it's like the older I'm 43 now. So the older I get, the more it's like, I've got to ice just about every time after I run. I've got to ice my knees. I've got to try to make sure I'm okay. I got to, do like today. I had a big run yesterday, so I got to hit the hot yoga today, right? So I do hot yoga, which has a great mindfulness component, but it's also just great to kind of open everything up and kind of just really, stay flexible. So, there's a lot that I do. I mean, I think when it comes to health stuff, that's a big one. The other, stuff that I do, I think, being like you talked about gratitude, being grateful. I have a gratitude journal that I do. I also there's this app out there called Winstreak, WIN Winstreak.
Yeah.
And it's a free app, and it's you write down at the end of the day, you write down 3 wins for today. So 3 wins that happen in your professional or personal life, and you just put it in the app. And then for tomorrow, you say, what are 3 wins you're looking forward to tomorrow? So what it does is it gets you to remember the day, and you can kind of reframe it before you go to bed. Like, here's the things that I got to, here's the good things that happened today. And then here's the things I'm going to have some wins tomorrow, right? So what you're doing is you're framing yourself as a winner, that you can identify those things. If we don't stop and celebrate and kind of take a moment, those things are gone. We just kind of think we go from life to life, nothing happens. But when you can look back and you say, man, I did this, and this is what I'm headed towards, it's exciting. It gives you a real, I think even that builds confidence.
So interesting. I when you said win streak, I was thinking, I think there's another app just called Streak or something, where you keep it keeps a record of, try to keep your streak going. But I have a manual practice, like my nightly journal practice is 3 wins from today, 3 wins I want for tomorrow, and then gratitude, 3 gratitude. So that's kind of my pre-bed routine is I'll sit down and do that. But those are awesome. I really love that.
And staying on the subject, I'm sure you're familiar with The Gap and the Gain. That book totally changed my life, when it's like we always look where we want to go and see that gap, from where we are, where we want to be. But when you kind of look in perspective, how far we've come, you always feel on top of the game, because you always feel a winner. Like, I've done this.
Yeah, I read that book, about a year ago, whatever that was. And I'm going to go away for a retreat between Christmas and New Year's this year, and just I'm going to bring that book with me. Just some questions in there of, where have I been? What can I be grateful for? What's the, measuring not the distance from here to, because, the horizon, it will always have this kind of, it's just on the horizon effect. We'll never get to the horizon. We'll keep moving and we'll never get there. So we have to look back and say, look how far we've come. And that it does lead to gratitude. It does lead to joy and contentment and peace. And if we're only focused on how far we have to go, it's like it's really discouraging, because we're never going to get fully there, right? So we've got to stop and slow down. And I think the older I get, the more I realize, like, life isn't about that stuff anyway. When people die, it's never about, I wish I'd created a bigger empire or done this or done that. And I have to remind myself that I'm an achiever. Like, I love doing big things, but it's the time with family. It's the time that, the stuff experiences we had, and the people we invested into. Those are the best investments. Those are the most powerful things.
Yeah, I think you and I have very, very similar personalities, because I also have an achievement orientation and competitiveness. And I have really had to rewire myself a little bit from exactly that. Just what's next? Oh, that's great. Even when I was in the corporate world and I had teams that I was working with, I had to have somebody on the team that was a little more mindful about, hey, let's celebrate what we just did. And, because I'm already going. So the Gap in the Game was a great one for me as well in that regard, just to do the journal practice. It triggered me doing what are my 3 wins? We try to do it in our business. We start out on Mondays doing our plan for the week. We have an annual plan. We break it down into quarterly goals, and then each week we look at where we are. But one of the things that we don't do every week, but we try to do it as often as possible, is just wins from last week, so that we take a moment, sit back, reflect on it. Because when you think about it, you have come just an incredibly massive distance from wherever you were, and so. It is a good mindset technique.
Yeah, that's great. You guys are a power couple. I love that you guys do that together, and you do the goals and the wins and all that. It's so good. So
we mesh in a lot of ways, and that's one of our gratitudes as well, that we get to live and work, and we do it seamlessly almost. I mean, we really complement each other in many ways, and in the double entendre way, we try to complement each other as often as we can. But I also have a similar. I divorced in my mid 30s. I think it was 37 or something, and I saw it as one of the biggest failures of my life. I was down on myself. I ran. Kind of literally, like an opportunity came up to work overseas on an expat contract for a couple of years, and that call came just right in the midst of that process, and someone I knew said, "Hey, would you ever consider working overseas?" And I was like, Yes. Right now, I'm ready. Let's go. And so, a bit of it was, I think, kind of running away from that situation, and it allowed me to redefine myself because I was in a totally new environment. I met lots of new people, Mrs. Deaton being one of those, and so it was a transformational moment for me, and the universe really opened up in a way in that regard. But yeah, it's just powerful the way those things work, and we're grateful to be able to work and live and do all those things together. So yeah, it's
Great. Great, man. No, I
really
love it.
fulfilling.
It's amazing how there's the like stuff in life. It's not life doesn't happen to us, it happens for us, and it's just
Right.
like everything is. That's why I even tell people with investing, it's like, what's the way to get started or not ever lose money or whatever. It's like, I think it's more about learning. It's about, what you can learn. If you're learning through everything you're doing, you're going to have some home runs, you're going to have some where you strike out. And I think it's just in life, if everything is learning, then nothing's failure. Nothing is failure. Everything's just gets you to where you need to be.
Yes.
Totally.
What would be an advice that you would give to your younger self today?
I'd say go on the cash flow fight club and bring your box. I still got the glove on, so I feel like I'm a dangerous man. Money in my pocket. But no, advice I would give to younger Bronson that had hair and had his whole life ahead of him. I think I would just say, like, I think Warren Buffett said this once, like, go after the person you admire the most and just go work for them for free or just go find a way to be around them. I think that's a great tip. I also think just be willing to try different things and take risks, and don't be afraid to fail. It's either Rod Khleif says this. He says it's either a success or it's seminar, right? Either you succeed or you learn. And so I think it just kind of in line with what we're talking about of just, most people are unwilling to fail. And, Michael Jordan, there's this quote from him that says, I've missed 50,000 shots and taking the game winning shot, 80 times and missed and I'll keep missing. And he's like, but that's why I'm successful, right? Like kind of the idea of like, just that you're willing to continue to take shots. And as we get older, as we go through things that are painful, we can kind of lose that. We just kind of go for the safe thing. And, when I left my job, that was a very difficult thing to do. And I was scared. I was like, even though I had money coming in, it was like, I just didn't have anybody around me that was like encouraging me to do it. My whole family was like, no, why would you ever leave your great job? You're making this money. It was the golden handcuffs. But then I got in this entrepreneurs group and they all were without exception, there was 5 other guys and they were all like, yeah, you should pretty much leave your job as soon as possible. Right. So sometimes it's the people you're around too. So if you want to get to the next level, get around better people or people that are where you want to be.
Yeah, staying on that thread, I know you recently published the book Right Over Your Shoulder, and I think it took you a year or two. You had a inspirational moment and decided to take on this endeavor of writing an hour a day for a certain amount of time. And tell us a bit about your book and the journey there.
Yeah, so the book is right back here. It's called Fire Yourself, and basically, the subtitle is How to Replace Your Working Income with Passive Income in 3 years or less. And I was able to do that. I was able to leave my job in 3 years, having investment and other income. So, I've had now over 1,500 one-on-one phone calls with high net worth investors, a lot of doctors, lawyers, people that are like, I should be doing something in real estate, but I don't know how. I don't have the time. Well, this basically is a guide to help people that are like, how do I grow my wealth without taking up more of my time? Right. And that's what the same problem you're trying to solve for investors. And so if somebody's never done that, that can feel really intimidating. So like, I think of a call I had with a doctor who had his own practice and he had a net worth of 4 or 5 million, and he's only done stocks. He's got a money person that manages his money. He's never done anything himself. So for someone like that, their biggest thing is to actually get some experience to learn and actually pull the trigger and invest in a deal. Right. That's the first thing. And so to get there, this is a book that kind of helps people to understand that process and also some different asset classes. You and I, we both love, you guys, we love multifamily assets. We also do some other things like ATMs and car washes and oil and gas. But I think, again, it's just kind of in that vein of learning, of just saying, okay, well, if, what's wrong with what I'm doing now? There's a whole chapter about Wall Street and why that's something you should be aware of. But it's something most people can understand. If I have a business and I quit or I sell my business, how am I going to generate, even if I have cash, how am I going to generate money? How am I going to generate cash flow? And even Wall Street, typically with stocks and bonds, you're not typically generating cash flow. If you do, it's very small. So there are a lot of assets out there that do generate consistent cash flow that you can retire from, because people ask that question: is it better to have appreciation or cash flow? I always ask that question for people, and I always, I've had such a bias now. The cash flow is just way better because you can leave a job with cash flow. You can cover your mortgage with cash flow. You can pay for insurance and a car and different. You can do it with cash flow. With making a lot of money someday, you can't. Like you can
Right.
maybe someday, but not now, right? So building that cash flow, even in a retirement account, because if you get it back sooner, you can reinvest it and it actually lowers your risk basis in a deal. So that's why I think cash flow is really amazing. But so those are just a few things we talk about in the book.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, talking about we're big proponents of that as well. I mean, that's kind of what we are um, diving into more and more these days, where it's how can we create cash flow and even long term cash flow, because some things are, even our land business. I mean, a lot of what we do is creating cash flow, but it's through 4, 5, 6 year promissory notes where people come in, and so those have to be replaced every so often, or things start to dry up and things like that. But I know we've been through a hard 18 months or so. I would imagine you've had a deal or two that maybe wasn't what it was forecast to be. I guess, how are you managing those conversations and going about that aspect of the business? Because that's sometimes tough, and I speak from experience.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all of our deals are going 100% according to plan. There's
Oh,
never
okay, awesome. Great.
just kidding. Get the gloves out here. No, we've had some challenges, especially in multifamily. It's been all over. Anything bought in the last couple of years that is a value add deal. It's very rare I find one that's value add that somebody's not having some struggles with.
Right.
And whether it's expenses, it's the interest rate, it's the valuations. I mean, we're seeing things we bought for $60 million after renovating 70% of the units and increasing the rent by 25%. The things are valued substantially less than what we paid for, right? So that's a real challenge, as you know. So some tough conversations, and this is stuff that people invest and. Interesting. I think for me, I look at it as a very conservative type of investment, but seeing a lot of struggles and challenge and potential for some loss, right? So that's hard, it's painful, and you just try to be, for me, just trying to be as honest as you can with people. This is where we're at. This is what's happening, and but I think the last couple of years we've actually shifted a lot more to these alternatives. So we kind of saw some of it coming a little bit of just let's shift a little bit. And so we've moved to, I think we've raised about 15 million for ATM machine funds, which is with a large ATM operator. We have the other stuff I mentioned before, and just trying to find stuff that, is a little different. But I think, in general, whether you're, it's funny being a pastor, you deal with people when they go through stuff, they go through loss, they go through, somebody dies and you're kind of in there, you're kind of working with them. And that's the stuff that really matters too. And so when it comes to money, it matters, but it's like, I mean, for some people, it is a really, really big deal. If they have to lose some money or to not have some perform, it's a really big deal. But it's not, somebody's not gotten a terminal diagnosis where they've got 6 weeks to live. So in some ways, it's kind of a reframe too, to be like, it is really important. I feel like we're stewards of folks. We do everything we can to try to preserve capital. That's the first thing. And the second thing is to try to grow the capital. But, also, so I guess, again, some uncomfortable conversations, but it also produces growth in me and growth in our team because we're able to have those conversations with people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, they're tough. A lot of it has to do with the front end as well, just making sure that risks are known. Somebody's not putting every dime that they have into a certain investment, and they're able to do that. But yeah, it's the nature of things, and kind of almost a once in a generation turbulence, especially with the pandemic and then inflation and then the Fed and all that stuff kind of cascading into it. But what's 2024 in the future hold for Bronson, and what are you looking forward to?
Yeah, well, I think with these boxing gloves, I knocked my crystal ball off the shelf and it broke. So I'm sorry, I can't give you an exact reading, but no, it's a good question. I mean, I think in 2024, I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity. I think there's continuing to be opportunity. I really think multifamily is starting to get to be really attractive in certain levels now. I mean, some deals have gotten better. The challenge with that is a lot of investors are not excited about multifamily like they were 2 years ago. Yeah. So that's a challenge. But then it also creates opportunity if you can just create a compelling, hey, this is why we like this, and there are some unique situations out there. We're just continuing to try to find a way to add value. We really want to help educate people on, how to grow their net worth, how to grow themselves as a person, and we do that through passive investing. And so that's really our focus. And so, I've actually, like I said, I got these planning times that go away, and I just kind of think about it and pray about it and just try to wrestle with, okay, what's next? And there's tons of opportunities out there, but I think it's important to say no to a lot of them to do the things that really matter. So, but yeah, I think so. 2024, I think there's going to continue to be more challenges and more pain in certain things, but there's also going to be opportunities that come up. We'll see. There's some talk of the Fed, lowering rates a little bit, which could be a big reprieve, and that could mean maybe some groups start jumping in more, or there's more opportunity that shows up. So,
yeah, definitely. So more investing. Then you're on the lookout for good investments and deals. On the personal side, where are you going to put your next pin in the map?
As far as travel,
yeah.
Let's see. Well, I've got a trip to Guatemala in February.
Okay.
For 5 or 6 days, and I'm going to Portugal in April. So I'm excited for a couple of those trips, and then I've got to plan something for fall, like a big one for fall. But I'd love to go to like someplace really off the grid, like Bangladesh or Nepal or something that's just totally different. I think it'd be a blast, especially all the hiking in Nepal and stuff would be a lot of fun.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's definitely one of my bucket list trips is a hike through Nepal and checking out all of that. So cool.
That's great.
Yeah.
Last thoughts?
No, really, it was such a pleasure to listen to you, and I'm sorry that we only have an hour to speak. You have so much insight and so much wisdom to give to the world. So we're very excited.
Yeah,
no,
likewise. Appreciate you coming on, and I'm sure we'll cross paths at a networking event somewhere in the near future or so. But yeah, we do appreciate it and wish you all the best as you carry Bronson Equity and your other ventures forward.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it. I really was going to say, I just so appreciate you guys, your heart of both wanted to grow wealth and then the personal development piece as well. I think we're kind of similar in that way. So just love connecting with you guys any way I can. And of course, for those listening, just really, I think this is a great show. I love the concept. I think I want to hear I don't know if there's a ding, ding, ding at the end when you do some of the Fight Club stuff. But
in the edited version, there is.
In the edited version. Okay, nice. All right. So you can put the music on when I raise my glove.
A little Rocky Balboa or something.
Yes, and again, if listeners want to get in touch with you and order the book as well, where they can find you.
So you get the first chapter of the book for free. The full length is on Amazon or Audible, but if you go to bronsonequity.com, there's the first couple chapters you can get for free on my website. So you can check that out. Would love to connect with anybody. We also have stuff for our investment club there, and I'm on all the social medias as well. So, but thanks again, guys. This is really fun. Really appreciate you having me today.
You bet, man. Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks.
For those of you joining us today, we hope you enjoyed this time in the Champions Corner as much as we did. Got some awesome takeaways, and most importantly, will take action to continue living your best life and maximizing your potential. Mindset is such an important aspect of life, and when coupled with action, delivers undeniably powerful results.
Please subscribe to the podcast to hear from more great guests and get the latest mindset mastery insights and cash flow matchups.
Again, thank you so much for investing your time with us, and we look forward to seeing you next time on the Cash Flow Fight Club podcast.